Good afternoon. Welcome to IMSM. I'm Maria Dimitrova, Head of Business Development and Lead Auditor on Quality, Information Security, and Occupational Health and Safety Management Systems. I'll be talking today about the 2020 trends in ISO implementations, on which we based our 2021 strategy. ISO compliant management systems have never been in such high demand. Our most recent research shows surprising changes in how organizations approach continual improvement and seek to integrate their existing systems into one fully operational system thanks to the relevant ISO standards. And the legitimate question here is, why ISO standards? The simple answer to this question is that ISO standards, ISO compliant management systems, offer a common and internationally recognized work frame to help organizations identify risks and opportunities, and thus tackle uncertainty. This said, I think that the ISO survey for 2019 is an excellent starting point for our talk today. In 2019, as well as at the beginning of 2020, ISO 9001 Quality Management Systems was by far the most frequently implemented ISO standard. Well, as we can see, according to the ISO survey for 2019, only, for instance, 3% of the certificates issued that year aimed to conform with ISO 27001, Information Security. The same percentage of certificates were issued for ISO 45001, which is the first Occupational Health and Safety standard. And interestingly enough, there were few organizations interested in implementing business continuity management systems or systems compliant with ISO 22301. Well, last year, with the beginning of the pandemic, our IMSM quarterly surveys detected that those trends might have changed. The analysis based on the metrics for the second quarter of 2020 show the clear tendency for organizations to implement and integrate a broader range of management systems. Well, the trend did not change during the last quarter of 2020. Organizations are definitely switching the interest from standards that have traditionally been considered sector-specific to a broader range of implementations. Although, as we can confirm, ISO 9001 and ISO 14001 are still the most implemented standards. As leading ISO specialists, IMSM delivers high-quality ISO consultancy to organizations of all sizes and all sectors in over 20 countries worldwide. Traditionally, our most significant markets have been the US, UK, Germany, France, and Canada. So, I'll focus on these 5 markets and break down our findings per country and per sector for you. Let's start with interest in ISO implementations per country. Our latest survey confirms the trends detected earlier in 2020. Interestingly, though, organizations in France and Germany are more likely to focus on quality, on information security, and on environmental management systems, whilst in the US, UK, and Canada, organizations seek a broader coverage. But why is ISO 27001 in such high demand? We're talking information security. It's all about policies to ensure protection in a global scale. Over the last decade, digital technologies have transformed both the economy and society across countries and across industries. Data has become the center of this digital evolution and a means to generate new information. To capture the benefits of a better use of data and enhance productivity and competitiveness, standardization is required. In the area of information security and cybersecurity, a common framework is essential to tackle threats. Industry leaders such as the US, UK, and the EU actually aim to improve the mechanisms to ensure highest levels of information security while ensuring that A, information flows within the market and across sectors, B, common rules and ethical values are respected, especially regarding personal data protection and consumer protection, and C, there is fair access to and use of information, and this fair access is guaranteed. It's a difficult task, and to secure benefits from the current digital transformation, national strategies are being implemented through national regulations, to which ISO standards offer a common international framework for integration. Well, let's see then how it goes per country, starting with the US. In 2020, US-based businesses demonstrated the most interest in implementing a sector-specific standard, namely ISO 17025, showing how adaptable organizations need to be. ISO 17025 is applicable, as any other standard, to all organizations performing laboratory activities and specifies the general requirements for competence, impartiality, and consistent operations. ISO 17025 was not on the list of standards in 2019 if we refer to our first slide. Back to Europe. Organizations in Germany and France, meanwhile, were more likely to implement management systems on quality, environment, and information security. Now, if we add France, we'll see that there, organizations also showed interest in implementing the first international standard on occupational health and safety, or ISO 45001. But before we go further, let me please elaborate on information security. Information, as well as all related processes, systems, networks, and people, are generally considered to be assets in achieving business objectives. Now, information held and processed by an organization is subject to threats. If traditionally organizations have dealt with threats such as computer-assisted fraud, espionage, sabotage, vandalism, fire, flood, etc., all good-fashioned threats, recently, merely several years ago, we started also facing challenges related to malicious code, computer hacking, and denial of service attacks. If it were not enough, in March last year, because of the severe lockdown measures in many countries, threats were quite literally brought home. For most businesses, it meant ad hoc measures, which always translates into increased costs. The question is why it translates into increased costs. And the answer is quite simple. Most organizations fail to consider efficiently information security while designing and developing their information systems. Information security is not always considered, or if it is, it seems to be regarded as a technical solution and often is mistaken with cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is indeed part of information security. However, information security goes further. It is essential to understand it. And it is essential to understand as well that the information security levels and the information security coverage that can be achieved through technical means are limited, as opposite to the coverage that an ISO 27001 management system offers. Moving to the UK and Canada, we will see now that both countries present a profile similar to the US, with an interest in a broader range of standards, including ISO 45001, which I will remember is Occupational Health and Safety. So, I promised country-specific, I promised also sector-specific data. Our data analysis shows that the spike of interest in both information security and business continuity compliance in the current COVID-dependent business environment is now a consistent trend across quarters, countries, and sectors as well. Starting with legal services, please be aware of the fact that nowadays information security is by far the most requested standard in the sector. It is also one of the leading standards in finance, where we have an interesting reading, because ISO standards prove apparently essential. Let me illustrate my point referring to the Financial Reporting Council. The FRC has postulated a reporting model based on 3 strands: objective-driven, communication-focused, and an overreaching set of principles, which is literally what ISO management systems implement. For instance, objectives and communications are 2 key clauses in almost all the management standards. The FRC expands further on reporting. Please allow me to summarize their approach for you. According to them, the company stakeholders should understand the organization's performance and how it generates and sustains value. They should also understand how it makes decisions and hold the company to account. The FRC considers that the company itself should determine its key stakeholders. And this is almost straight out of clause 4 of almost any of the ISO management system standards. So in other words, it just screams ISO standards at us. Now, for those unfamiliar with ISO standards, let me do a little scene setting. The management system standards have now been harmonized. They use the same format and highlight common themes. For instance, they all contain 10 clauses, which share almost the same headings. Many of these clauses are in fact general and apply whatever standard the organization is adopting, which explains the broad range of standards we find in finance, including a seemingly unrelated to finance standard, such as ISO 45001 Environmental Management. Increased interest in different standards and their implementations is consistent in logistic and supply chain. ISO 9001 with a 34% in logistics. However, we have a rising number, 14,001, 45,001, and 25,001. Very similar readings in the construction sector, where it comes as no surprise, we have 25% in occupational health and safety. As I said, this is the first international standard on occupational health and safety, which was meant to be adopted by May this year, and now because of COVID, we push until November 2021, so still some time to implement it. Information technology and network security, no surprises there. Readings are quite clear. The sector is interested in information security, quality management system, and environmental management. Again, it may seem unrelated to information technology. However, server allocations and the general IT infrastructure needs to comply with environmental requirements. So, ISO 14001 is in high demand in the sector again. Consumer goods and services present the same trend. And here comes a sector that previously had little interest in ISO implementations. I'm talking about sports and leisure. Similarly, we have quite a new trend in hospitality, and to comply with the current circumstances, the sector actually is quite keen on business continuity. And finally, let's have a look at manufacturing, one of the sectors that traditionally implement ISO-compliant management systems. Again, a wide range of interest across all management systems on ISO. Okay, let's talk about the key benefits of management systems. There are many benefits of implementing ISO management systems. In my opinion, though, the most important is that these systems are certifiable for compliance against the internationally recognized ISO standards. And by becoming ISO certified, organizations gain a high level of international recognition for something very important, for meeting the standard requirements relevant to their industry sector. And this said, thank you for listening. We're happy to answer your questions.
Hello. Hi, Maria. That was a great session, I have to say. And I know you wanted us to have some FAQs, and by golly, did they come through. So sent to the marketing team, I'm afraid. We've got sort of 6 or 7 questions for you to answer if you have the time.
Thank you. I'm delighted. Indeed.
That's brilliant. So shall I just go through them one by one and see?
Yes, please. Just to say, to confirm what you've been saying. Indeed, we had quite a lot of attendees during the virtual venue as well. We answered probably 10 questions, 11, something like that. Just excuse me, sunshine's coming in, disturbing me slightly. The team is still attending the venue, so I escaped just to make sure that we can attend. Our listeners at LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube as well, because, although we provided everyone with the link, courtesy of IMSM, to join the event, not everyone is able to do it. So, thanks for the suggestion that we could do it over social as well.
I think it's a great idea, because we can obviously there are people that wouldn't have been able to attend, so they can watch it and they can always send their questions in later as well. I mean, like I said, just after your live session, which was just an hour or so ago, I said we've got several questions here, so I'm going to fire away if that's okay. So the first one is from Pete in the UK, and he says, does ISO 27001 guarantee that we are also GDPR certified?
Thank you for this question, Pete. So I need to explain something at the beginning. I'm afraid that the way the question is formulated is misleading. So we should start by explaining what's the difference between the ISO 27001 and the GDPR. So the GDPR is a European regulation, and such as we need to comply with the regulation. Regulations can't be certified, unfortunately. We have to comply. So ISO 27001 is a standard. It means that it is a set of good practices and guidelines that allow us actually to implement a functioning management system and certify its conformity with standard. This said, a standard certification indeed helps towards compliance. But we need to be very careful here, because it cannot, however, certify it, because, as I say, regulations are not certifiable. So, undoubtedly, 27001 helps ensure that the correct compliance processes are designed, developed, reviewed, and improved, continually improved. That's important. And this is how organizations legal and regulatory guarantee compliance and met requirements. I hope I have answered the question. If not, Pete, please come back to us. I'll be happy to elaborate further.
And this is great. So what I'll do, Maria, afterwards, the people have asked the questions, I will send them the link to this video so they can see that you've responded, because sometimes it's just nice to listen to what somebody has to say. So, right, the next one I've got is, how does ISO 45001 help together with existing legislation such as HSE and industry schemes?
Well, that's a very nice question indeed. So let's think about something very important. In the first place, ISO 45001, few know, but it is the first occupational health and safety standard. So many compare ISO 45001 with reason, by the way, the grounds for it, to OSHA's 18001. However, OSHA's, although widely used, is a British standard. It's local. I'll use it actually to answer the question because we're more familiar with OSHA's. OSHA's focuses on hazards and potential issues within the organization. ISO standards, 45001 included, focus on the organizational environment, everything around us, not only workers and random people visiting our working sites, but also authorities, the wider society, our communities, our children, if you like, our legal representatives, etc., are considered. So this is it. This offers a comprehensive set of guidelines to ensure not only physical and mental health and safety, but also to comply with relevant national, local, and regulatory requirements. Logical, if you identify the authorities as an interested party, you'll be able to comply with their requirements. And in fact, clause 4.2, which is understanding the needs and expectation of workers and other interested parties, letter C, explicitly identifies the need for compliance. It literally says, I'll try to quote, it says, C, identify which of these needs and expectations are or could become legal requirements and other requirements. So it goes even a step further. It gets us prepared for any potential change in legal and regulatory requirements.
Yeah. Do you know what just piqued my interest there? You mentioned mental health. And I'm a lay person with regards to ISO. So I work in the marketing team, as you know, but obviously I'm not an ISO professional. But I've just been doing some work and with regards to ISO 45001 for our social stream. And what really piqued my interest was the consistent reference to mental health in ISO 45001. I thought that was quite interesting. So obviously it's a really important part of, occupational health in the workplace.
Occupational health and the safety specialists, many of them consider ISO 45001 to be a revolutionary standard.
Yeah.
Because the International Organization for Labor has identified a very distressing fact. They consider that there are 2.78 million deaths per year because of work-related accidents.
Yes.
Nearly 400 million accidents, non-fatal accidents, and illnesses, including mental health. It is considered work illness now.
Yeah.
So this is a very distressing statistics. On the right side, the ISO has published information about a study they've carried out, according to which 99% of those injuries, including deaths, mental health, etc., can be actually prevented. So the standard aims at offering a comprehensive set of guidelines to help organizations achieve it. Imagine this for human life, families, and societies.
Well, that's amazing. When you think about it, a business could be having a huge impact on saving lives. When you look at it in that respect, did you say it was nearly 3 million people, nearly 3 million lost their lives through yeah, I mean, that's a huge amount. That's nearly getting onto COVID numbers, isn't it? And when you look at it in relation to a physical illness. But yeah, no, that's, I mean, like you said, a business could be having this huge impact on people's lives. So yeah, I'm learning something every day from you guys.
It is interesting that you mentioned COVID, because I'd like to highlight in here that we have now the ISO COVID related guidance. This is 5005. It was issued last year, and please check out the ISO website, where you can find free access to 45001, which is a set of guidelines. And it is located, it is uploaded under the COVID resources tab on the ISO official website. So go there, please check out what the ISO recommends with regards to how COVID should be managed. It's a very interesting reading indeed.
It's
hugely taken into account.
Yes, definitely. I mean, I'm going to move on to a 27001 question here, because we've got loads of questions. It says, how do you explain nearly 30% interest in ISO 27001 in the legal white papers that we produced?
Oh, I suspect that someone has checked out our white papers. Well done. Thank you. I'm so pleased. So indeed, okay. That's a good one. Interestingly enough, aside from legal services being extremely sensitive to potential attacks, legal advisors operate on behalf of their customers and actually do research for them. ISO 27001 compliance adds value to the services. And this is why, for instance, we collaborate with the legal advisors and help them help their customers, because on the one side, we have legal compliance, but only an efficient management system actually can identify the need for compliance before compliance is actually on the table. Same as for the previous question about 45001. If you have identified your interested parties and authorities, maybe one of those, they normally are, so you'll be well prepared to approach any regulatory or legal changes. So there we go. This is why legal services are so interested in ISO 27001.
Thank you.
Right.
That's really
there are quite a lot of standards. People actually think that there is one standard. 27001 is the certifiable standard. We get certified against that one. But actually, the family 27000, the family of 27000 includes 57 or 58 different standards.
No.
Yes.
This blows my mind. Thinking about ISO, you know, when I started working at IMSM, I didn't know much about ISO. I still obviously don't, but I'm understanding more, and it just blows my mind. It's phenomenal. There's an ISO for just about everything, isn't there?
Indeed. Well, what we do actually, there are thousands and thousands of standards. What we do at IMSM is implement management system standards. So all those standards that are certifiable, offer guidance, and help improve internal processes.
Yes. It's a no-win situation, isn't it?
Always.
Win-win situation. That's the word I was trying to win-win situation if you have ISO. I've got 2 or 3 more here, if that's all right. Somebody has asked a very simple question: why is ISO 27001 so important?
Well, it depends on the version. If I may just joke about it, it may not be considered important, but if you don't address information related to risks,
yes,
you're fully compromised. Now, seriously, information related risks need to be addressed. It's our obligation. It's actually expected from us and the standards highlights the importance of information security to societies. So when we comply with information security, we add value, we give back to our society. So how do we address risks? Well, normally it is achieved by encompassing risks from physical, human, and technology-related threats associated with all forms of information within an organization or used by an organization. So that's how we structure our work. But it's a very important issue. We actually need to comply with information security and fight threats. There is no option there.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's
Because
just
actually prison is not an option.
yes.
Not a viable one.
Right. Here we are. This is about 14,001 by the looks of it. Why is ISO 14,001 in such high demand in finance? It is higher than ISO 27,001! Exclamation mark.
By the way, is it exactly the same person who asked the previous one about the 30%? I suspect it is.
I haven't got a name to this, so I'm not sure, but it does sound like it, doesn't it? Like somebody has asked a couple of questions in a row. Yeah.
Thank you very much, because it means people read our quarterly white papers. Basically, the other one is about to be published within a couple of weeks. Once we get to April the 1st, we'll issue our latest survey on ISO trends for Q1. But now back to this very interesting question. Thank you very much. I agree that if we consider the fact that ISO 40001 is environmental management systems, it may seem kind of unrelated to finance. Now, two aspects to be considered here. In the first place, the financial sector, is highly digitalized. What does it mean? Hardware and many servers all across the world. We're talking environmental impact, because the hardware and the operations behind those hardware facilities we have in finance. This is why there is such high demand for environmental compliance in finance. The other one is very typical across all sectors. Actually, ISO 40001 gives good image.
Yeah.
We are friendly, environmental friendly. We would like people to see it. And even if 14,001 may not be quite necessary compared to other standards, we tend to level our image and go for it anyway. But in my opinion, it's secondary, complementary to the first reason, which is actually literal, direct environmental compliance.
Yeah, that's quite interesting, because I read an article the other day, and it was about cryptocurrency, and it was saying that they were looking into the future of way people do finance. Obviously, we have regular banks, we have online banking at the moment, but they talked about cryptocurrency being much bigger in the future. It's already escalating exponentially. But what it said was that was a very eco-unfriendly way of doing finance. I couldn't understand what that was. I looked into it a bit more, and I think it's because they have to use such a huge amount of servers mining the Bitcoin or the cryptocurrency. That you've answered that question. I wondered why finance would have 14,001, but then you suddenly mentioned about servers, and then the light bulb went off. Yeah.
As we all know, companies try to locate their servers in northern countries, basically to reduce the cost of cooling down systems. But
yes,
no matter where the servers are located, they generate heat.
yes,
So yes, it's friendlier than paper, but it is still
yeah,
impacting the
yeah.
environment.
That's very interesting. That's very interesting. Okay, we have another. I think this might be the last one as well.
Okay.
What are the key benefits of ISO 27001 management system in finance? So again, mention 27001 and finance. So I don't know if
Yeah, I had a couple of very interesting meetings today with the finance people during the virtual event. So finance is waking up to the call. So yeah, quite relevant. Well, I'll try to summarize quickly, compile a list. I'm doing it straight away while I'm distracting you.
Maria, you have a big brain. I'm sure this is going to just roll off your tongue.
Thank you, Caroline. By the way, let me give my standard answer, which is the as many reasons as companies. Now, being more precise and answering the question, while a management system in 27001 with its 114 controls, for instance, across all operations, human resources, suppliers, operations, encryption, etc. Encryption is a very interesting section of the Annex A, where we can find the controls, but that's a different conversation. So, first of all, legal and financial risk minimization, because 27001 helps preserve information security. And here, very important, please do not consider 27001 as the cybersecurity standard. Cybersecurity is indeed comprised within 27001, but 27001 extends further. It's information security. Let's give you an example. Sorry, I'm getting tired. Well, imagine that we have 1,000 machines, computers, working in grid, making a huge calculation for the NASA. Why not? So, and we fully cover the technical part of security, cyber part of security. Yeah. There is no leak there possible, pen test, whatever. At the end of the day, someone picks up a piece of paper, a pen, writes down the result, and leaves it on their desks.
What a boo-boo is that? The very basic boo-boo of all. Pen and paper.
The cybersecurity aspects have been certainly met, not the information security aspects. So it's a very simple example, but you can find it every single day. Every time I audit a company, I just let them know the day before that please.
Do you know what? That is just like somebody saying an appliance doesn't work and they haven't plugged it in.
Yeah.
Isn't it? When you think about it, it's trace it back to the very basic first move.
Common sense. It's
Sometimes
all
the simplest thing. Exactly. Mm-hmm. Well, that's very much a lot of common sense, Maria.
Well, thank you. Therefore, it helps safeguard assets.
Yes.
Safeguard turnover and profits, because if I find during my audits a piece of paper and the documentation says and the processes say that no piece of paper should be found on the desk, they can be certified.
Yeah.
It's clearly against what they do. With ISO standards, it's all about doing what we say and saying what we do. If there is a discrepancy between what they say and what they do, they're not compliant. And the piece of paper, again, no matter how silly it may sound,
Yeah.
prove fundamental, essential to the operations. So in this case, it could be also compliance with legal and regulatory requirements. Encryption, that's a biggie. Why? Because people seemingly assume that if something is encrypted, it's all good.
Mm.
But I should disappoint you guys if you think so. Not necessarily. It depends on the country we operate in. For instance, it's not legal in the US to encrypt on a very basic physical level as a physical person, but it is legal in France. How do we manage then information transfer?
Yes. Well, it
Yeah,
becomes an issue, doesn't it, really?
it
If one
becomes
side can do
massive.
one thing and one side can't do another thing,
Mhm.
it just doesn't gel, it doesn't work.
If we have identified properly our interested parties in clause 4, which is exactly the same in all management systems, so we know how to comply with legal and regulatory requirements.
Yeah.
So we raise in this way our competitive advantage, our reputation, and we ensure our ability to continue business despite any potential disruptions coming
Yes.
from legal aspects, regulatory aspects,
Yeah.
etc. And the absolutely direct effect is the fact that we eliminate quite quickly operational glitches and vulnerabilities, as
Yeah.
well as large-scale damages.
Yeah. Well, that's yeah.
That's improving our overall operations, which means that it helps meet strategic business objectives as well.
Yeah. Thank you so much for answering these questions. I know there was quite a lot came through, but you're a good sport because I know you've been speaking all day. It's like I'm surprised you even have a voice left after the amount of time you've been speaking today, Maria. So I really do appreciate you popping on to do this live session.
Thank you
It
for
helps.
having me, Caroline. It's
That's
always
correct.
a pleasure. Let me know if I can do anything else for you guys.
No,
I'd be delighted. Thank
thank
you.
you very much. Thank you. And I will click the button and say goodbye.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye.